So you may be installing Windows 10 for the first time, or you might have Windows 10 already installed and you'd like to reinstall to follow what's in this guide in order to make it more secure and in order to make it more efficient. So to do the reinstallation, it's very simple. You go over here to Settings, or you go down to the Start button here and search for Settings. So you'll see the settings, the same icon of the settings up here on the left-hand side. As you can see here, I've pinned this to the taskbar. This is what's called the taskbar here. I've pinned this to the taskbar to make it easy for me to reach settings easily. Alternatively, you can also search for settings by clicking on this search icon and search for settings on Windows 10. When you're in settings, you'll have the main settings page. You scroll down to the bottom and you'll see update to security. Okay, select that, go on through that. You'll be in the security screen here, the update and security part of the settings. And on the left hand side, you'll see several options. You come down here to recovery and it'll open up this side screen here. When you've decided to reset this PC, make sure that, of course, you've backed up everything, whether you're backing up online via Google Drive or the alternative online drives or cloud computing, or if you just back it up with your hard drive, your own personal physical hard drive. But make sure you back up all of your information, back up all your work, all your files, and then you can get started. So once you're ready to do that, you press on Reset this PC here, Get Started. It will pop up with this blue menu here, and you'll have two options. You can either keep your files. Obviously, this is a better option for keeping your files, but if you back them up, then you can actually just go ahead and do remove everything. When you remove everything, it's a much better option because it's cleaning up all of the negative stuff you might have gotten from bad files, bad links. So you're kind of refreshing your laptop completely in that sense. So it's a much more secure option to go for remove everything. Now, if you decide to go for remove everything, then they'll give you a further option. Windows gives you another option here, which is you have a choice to just remove your files or remove also certain Windows files completely clean. Okay, so to change these settings, before you press next, you can decide to change these settings. So you click on here on change settings bit, and here this is the two types of settings you have. Now, depending on what you want to do, for example, if you want to make sure that your computer is clean for yourself, your own use, so you want to kind of renew your complete computer, then you can choose this, data erasure. This will remove the files and clean the drive, so it can get rid of malware, viruses, all sorts of issues. But it can take hours to do this, so you'll have to set your laptop aside. You have to have some time, maybe, it depends how big your hard drive is, depends how many files you've got, but it could take up to 3, 4, 5 hours, maybe longer even. So be sure that you have the time put aside to be doing this. And here you can, if you decide to do this in a kind of more secure setting, then you can decide to click on this, click it on here on data erasure. Data drives is a bit more complicated. You don't really need to do this in every case when it's going to be for your own personal reuse. This is much more useful if you're going to sell on this laptop. So if you want to get rid of the laptop, you're trying to wipe it clean and then sell it on eBay or to someone else privately, then you probably want to click on data drive cleaning as well, and that's going to take even longer. That can take a very long time to fully clean. Once you've done that, you click on confirm and go through to the installation settings. So whether you've done what I've just outlined before, which is the process to restart and reset the computer, or if you're just installing Windows 10 for the first time, let's say you've got a new laptop, for instance, regardless of that, it takes some time to set up and you'll get this blue setup screen. Okay, so you just wait until that's gone through and then you'll be at this kind of welcome screen that pops up. Now, generally, it's always a much better choice, and I'm going to be giving you a guide towards more security focus and more control focus of using Windows 10. So, of course, if you prefer, you're the kind of person who prefers to use voice activated and all sorts of data usage, etc., that's of course your choice. Feel free to do that. The rest of this guide will be focused on security side and on efficient side. One of the problems of all these extra things, it's not just a question about privacy and security. The problem of using all this extra data is it's using up a lot of your, it's transferring, as Windows is admitting here, it's saying it to you right here, which is that it can send data transfers to its servers, which can use up your internet connection, and it can also use up your processor speed. So it's also about efficiency. Doing these steps will not only improve your privacy and security, it also improves the efficiency of the machine you're working with. So here, for instance, the first option, of course, we're going to select don't use online speech recognition. There's no reason to use that unless I guess you might like the idea, but other than that, there's no reason to be using that, except for example, certain cases. For example, if you have some problems with writing, this is a very useful tool for people who might have some issues with mobility, writing, physical impairments. For that, of course, this is a fantastic option that allows them to compute and do computing like anyone else, and that's an excellent addition from Windows. On the other hand, for most people who will not have those issues, there's no reason why you should be using speech recognition beyond any personal reason for that. So once you've done that, you go on, click accept, get on to the next thing. Obviously, everything I've just mentioned in the previous setting also applies here. So the same thing here with location. No real reason why you should get this except for personal reasons. Maybe you like to have location, services or something like this. But most people, I would imagine most people would probably not prefer that. So you just select no and go ahead, accept to the next screen. Same story here, inking and typing, no reason for Windows to be checking what you're writing. So again, no, prefer not to send the data, and then select the accept and go to the next screen. And here again, tailored experiences, diagnostic data, no, there's no necessary reason for that. So again, select no and get on to the next one. Advertising ID, again, this is your choice, personal choices. Some people, I guess, would prefer to have personalized ID. Again, for a security and efficiency aspect, it's better to go on and select no and go on to the next one. Again, same thing here with getting more out of Windows. Here, there's a lot of different services that you might, for whatever reason, use on a personal scale. Maybe you like OneDrive, maybe you like Office 365. All of these are services that you might enjoy and you might need for your personal uses. On the other hand, if you're just looking for security, efficiency in this machine, then you can skip those and get on to the next screen. This is the main desktop, of course. You'll recognize this. And what you can see here, you've got your taskbar down here, which you can, of course, move over to the top or the right side, left side. A lot of people personalize that. You've got the search bar, you've got the Cortana bar here, the little Cortana icon, and the task switch view icon here, and you've got all your different desktop apps that are listed here. So the first thing we're going to go through is, well, here we can see the settings bar. So we've clicked on the Windows icon down here on the bottom left side, and you can see here that settings icon I was mentioning, and that's how you get to settings bit. So the first thing is going to get to settings, okay, and we've got that overall settings main place, which is where we started the whole of this tutorial with. With the settings, first thing we're going to go through is one by one. So we'll start with system and go down one by one. So if we start with, rather we'll start with, if we go down to, all the way down to the bottom of these settings, we'll go to Windows Update. That's the first place to start, update and security. So we're back at where we started. Previously we went to recovery, and this time what we'll do is we'll go to checking for updates. That's really critical. Updates are really fundamental. People don't understand how fundamental they are. If you leave your system without updates, then there's going to be serious security flaws throughout. So this is the number one thing you have to do from the very beginning. The other thing about updates is that often the big updates, the large updates that you'll get, depending on what kind of Windows you're running, what version of Windows 10 you're running, they can take a long time to install. So you can do that in the background whilst you get on with setting up everything else. So that's why you want to check for updates as the first thing. Okay, so you go and check the updates. It's going to give you a little green check mark. If there's a list of updates to do, they're going to start to install by downloading them. So by now, of course, you would have clicked down here and added a internet connection, or you would have done this in the setup screen at the beginning of setting up Windows 10. So you would have an internet connection ready, which allows you to download the updates. So you download your updates, and then you're ready to get on with the rest of the setup. Okay, so in the background, it's downloading updates, getting everything ready, and you can actually do. But often people think that's the end of the story, But you have to also get your software and your settings ready. So To start with, we're going to hit with system. So we're going to begin with system, and we have already here a range of different options, starting with the display. A lot of this can be very personalized. I'm showing you how I personally set these up, but of course each person has their own preferences. So in display here, we've got brightness functions. It's not really too important. Night light is extremely useful, and you can use night light to actually change the amount of blue light. And this is very bad for your eyes, as many scientific studies have shown. So it's actually very good to have a night light and have warmer colors. You can schedule these for a time period, for example, to switch on at night, or you can actually just turn on automatically, which is usually what I do. I automatically turn it on and I give it a high strength level, because this reduces the amount of blue light and makes the whole screen much more kind of a reddish brown color, which is much better for your eyes. So you should do that as a kind of a health precaution. Then we go down to the further down on the display, and you'll see that there's an option for screen resolution. That's up to you how you want to set that up. Obviously, you can also switch around the display orientation. Again, very personal question. If you're using multiple displays, for example, if you're hooking up your laptop to a TV or a PC screen, then you can also toggle these elements here. This is where you can set your screen to either duplicate or extend, play around with the way your screens are showing up on your laptop and on the connected screen. And then you've got the sleep options, which are not too important. Over here on the advanced display settings, you'll be able to see scaling settings, and here you might want to check out and personalize your own scaling settings, as you might, there might be a reason why you, for example, might like Windows not to have blurry settings, for instance. So here you can see the duplicate displays. This is an option that you have. You can extend, or you can show only on one display or the other. This only applies for people using PC screen or TV to extend their display. So down here, we're going over to the next section here with sound, and here we can see the sound, master volume. This is all things that you can also change down here on the bottom right of your taskbar. And you can see here there's a little sound settings. I'm sure you all know how to do that. And you've got your microphone input. This is what I'm using right now to talk to you. So you've got your microphone, you can test it if it's working. Now let's say you're quite privacy conscious and you're not too interested in having your microphone working. For example, you might not want to record or make a video like this or any of those things. If you want to change those aspects, you can go down here to manage sound devices. Okay, this is where you change the activation of these different sound devices. So you click on that little manage sound devices, and you'll be able to see this menu. And here on microphone, for instance, you can turn this off. You can actually have the option to disable this. You just right click and click disable, and it will disable the microphone. Okay. Now if we keep going down to the next section, which is notifications section, here you've got a choice of notifications. A lot of people really get upset with notifications, especially when they install antivirus software or all sorts of notifications, and they don't realize that you can actually turn off notifications. So it's right here, get notifications from apps and other senders, and you can just turn this one right off, and you won't get any more of those annoying pop-ups. Very simple solution to one of the things that is one of the most annoying distractions to productive work and productivity. Then next little section here with focus assist. Here you can actually also do the similar thing again for productivity to try and help you focus. You can force notifications off completely or keep just alarms on. This is another option as well. So if you keep the notifications on, you can always turn off all notifications except alarms, for example. Power and sleep, this is up to you completely. Sometimes useful to have battery power quite short. That way you don't use up battery power. Is good for saving. On the other hand, often it's very important to stop the laptop turning off when you're plugged in, when it's got power source plugged in. This is something that annoys a lot of people because their laptop turns off. Sometimes they can lose their work. Easy fix to this is go down to settings, go down to power and sleep, and put never when you're plugged in. That way your laptop doesn't go to sleep and does not turn off without you wanting to turn it off. Down here on storage, this is quite an important aspect here. This storage sense, people have two minds. Different people think it's useful or not. I prefer to turn it off But I like to go down here to configure storage sense, and there I like to change some of the settings there. Here you can actually see, before I show you what to do with configuration, here you can see how storage sense actually tries to work out what's happening in your machine, breaks down the usage of the memory on your machine, the hard drive memory, and it's kind of useful for having an insight. On the other hand, whether you want storage sense to automatically free up space, that's a question for your own interests. You know, that some might say that it can make mistakes and accidentally delete or free up space that you actually need. So maybe it's a little bit risky on that aspect. Up to you, whatever you prefer. However, come over to this configure storage sense, and this is a very useful little thing here, which is once you've got that, personally, we can turn this off here, but on temporary files, you can actually press delete temporary files that my apps aren't using and do that for every day or every week or every month. And that's a very useful way of keeping temp files out, including those that are produced by your internet browsers, but also all sorts of other apps. Keep them out of your machine. That way you can clean up your machine and actually save space as well. So that's always a really useful little tool there. Then you can go back. So you can see that I was trying to click back. So you can go back down to storage, back to storage, and here again you've got the list of the different things that are being used up. This is actually quite a useful security feature to find out if something is a very large file or very large program that's using up a lot of space and that doesn't seem to be belonging in the right place. This can actually show you that kind of, it can act as a warning sign for that reason. Tablet mode, I have no idea why anyone would use this, but anyway, I usually just turn this off and make sure that this is desktop mode. That's usually the best way. And again, multitasking, I mean, this might be useful for certain people. For those who want a vanilla, simple, efficient machine, then just turn these off. There's no reason for having this. Projecting, again, unless you're projecting, no need for that, so better turn it off. Shared experiences, again, this is very important to turn off, especially for security focus aspect, because if you're using Bluetooth by accident or if you've got some kind of public Wi-Fi connection that's somehow turned on, you can actually end up sharing a lot of your files or all sorts of aspects of your computing can be shared, even accidentally. So it's better just turn this off. Sharing across devices, again, same story. Why have it on except for personalization? Some people might like to have personalization of Windows phones with Windows desktops. But for most of you who's going to be doing this for security and efficiency computing, work computing, any of those aspects, then you probably want to turn this off as well. Clipboard history, again, this is optional. No, again, if it's focused on security and efficiency, no need for clipboard history. This is actually using up some of your RAM. This is not just a security question. This is also a question about your computer saving up your clipboard activities and saving it inside the RAM, and therefore it's dragging the efficiency of your machine. So that's always useful to turn off. Remote desktop, again, this is only going to be required for people working in enterprises, people who need, for example, a system administrator to help them figure what's happening with the computer, if there's a computer crash, some kind of issue in an enterprise or business. So for most of the personal users, or even if you're using it as a company but do not need this remote desktop aspect, you can turn that one off. And not only do you turn it off here, this is something you'll see with Windows 10, is that often there are a lot of further steps that you need to do to get your intention complete. So if you want to actually turn this off, it's not good enough just to click this one button. You also have to click here and make sure that you have no users that are actually remotely accessing this. And that's a kind of an initial important first step. So we click on this aspect here, you'll be able to see this pop up. And here you can also remove any desktop users being given access to the remote desktop. Bluetooth should be definitely off. There's no reason for Bluetooth. There is an argument for Bluetooth on mobile phones, but I cannot see the argument for laptop Bluetooth. It's an extremely inefficient way of sharing files or sending files. If you're working as a company, you can share and send files much more efficiently using secure hard drives, physical hard drives, or even online through secure online cloud computing. Bluetooth is just antiquated technology, but there are many exploits that have been demonstrated about Bluetooth and the ability to access computers. So why have it on? Just turn it off. Again, coming back to the early principles, if there's anything you can do to reduce entry points for negative actors, then you should do that automatically. There should be no reason to use things that are not necessary for your daily or professional use. So here we've got the printers and scanners. This is up to you whether you want to keep some of these. I tend to turn off OneNote because I'm not going to use this. You might have to use this for your business purposes, so you might want to keep this. Again, just remove it. If you're not going to use it, remove it. It's a simple philosophy, but it keeps you, there's fewer moving parts. This is the main point. You want to reduce the amount of moving parts in this entire system, this operating system, which has so many moving parts that it actually can, and others in the future can, develop exploits of little tiny things, such as a small OneNote device or a OneNote driver, which can then somehow be exploited either now or in the future to cause problems for you and for your business, for your personal use. So for that reason, just always remove anything you're not going to use. Same thing with XPS. I'm not using XPS, so I remove that. On the other hand, print to PDF can be very useful for your personal work aspects, so you can keep that one on. Okay. So here we're over. So I forgot to mention that we've gone over from settings. Now we've gone over to the next main part of the menu, which is devices. So that first one was Bluetooth, printers, and now we're going down to, we're skipping through mouse and touchpad. There's not much to change there, and we're going over to typing. So we're on typing here. This is a quite important aspect here to turn off everything on this. There's no reason why you should have an autocorrector. See, laziness is an important entry point for either major corporations or for negative actors to create and exploit holes, security holes. Major corporations themselves may have very good intentions in trying to help you to type better, etc. But they also can, their deployment of technology can also create security holes for you and for themselves as a whole, as a corporation. So for that reason, just turn off anything, again, the moving parts that you want to kind of fix down and hold down and stop them from, jumping around in your operating system. So here again, spelling, there's no reason you should be requiring a spelling corrector. If you're using a word processor, whether it's LibreOffice or Microsoft Word, anything like that, there will be a spelling inbuilt spell checker in there. So there's no real reason why you should be using spell checkers on your machine. And if you're not sure about spelling, just go on your browser and check the spelling. Do it the old school way. In fact, it's not very old school. You've got Google. You can just search the word you're looking for and check your spelling there. It takes you 5 seconds. So laziness is a really big problem for many people in terms of security holes. Do not be lazy. Make sure that you just put a tiny amount of effort and it will pay off in terms of having a more secure machine. Again, here down here, how AI has helped you, you should click on typing insights, and here you should definitely turn this off. The typing insights should be turned off because that is, again, something that can create some security holes either now or in the future. Okay, so going down further on the typing, again, same story with hardware keyboard. Everything should be off here. Multilingual text should be off unless you have a very important role or need for this specific use. For example, if you're a translator, you have a real need for this. It could be personalized questions, so then you might want to keep this on. But for most people, I would guess it would be off. Typing insights off, as I mentioned, no reason for that. So we're going down further in the devices aspect. Autoplay, you can turn it on or off, it's up to you. You don't really need it on. Again, this is another moving part that can potentially be exploited further down the road in the future, So, something that you might want to turn off there. In terms of defaults, there's no reason to take any action, but you can always have a pop-up screen that opens up the folder to give you when you're inserting a USB disk or memory card. Once you've gone through the autoplay section, now you've finished that, you go ahead to the main settings menu, go back to. Once you've done that, you can see phone. That's the next section. You won't need to touch this unless you're really intent to personalize your phone device and attach it to your Windows 10. For most people, it's not going to be useful, so just skip that. Go ahead to network. That's an important sub-menu there. You'll be able to see the sub-menu on the left-hand side. with the starting with the status. In status, you'll see the name of your public network. This is your direct link between you, your router, your internet service provider, and your internet connection. You want to go here and change connection properties, and over there you'll be able to select some quite important options here that most people miss out. First of all, connect automatically when range. Turn this off. There's no reason to, right? This is the whole point that it's all back to that laziness aspect. I mean, all this means is if you turn this off, all it means is that you'll have to, when you turn on the laptop or go back to wake up from sleep, well, you have to go and click on that little internet icon in the bottom right of your screen and click on it and turn on the internet and select your connection. It takes about 10 seconds. Whereas if you automatically connect, it stays on, stays connected on, and it automatically searches for your connection when you've got your Wi-Fi on. That's a very important weakness that exists. Let's say you take your laptop to a cafe and you're not using public Wi-Fi, but you forget to turn off your Wi-Fi. Your Wi-Fi will be sending out a constant beeper, a little beep out to all these different network connections trying to connect to your home one. And it will be telling all those different connections what's the name of your home connection. So it's a very important leak that can happen like that. Why have that? Just turn it off, and when you need to connect, you can physically do that. It takes you 5 seconds. Again, moving parts, you're locking them down. Same story. Always, you should have a network profile which is public. That's always useful and stops file sharing, print sharing. That's even though private seems like you can trust it, no reason for that. So just leave it as public. That's a much better network profile to hold on to. Okay. And the other next thing here that you want to look at is random hardware addresses. This is not going to be available for everyone. This depends a lot about the hardware, the type of computer you're using. If your computer has certain hardware capacities, it will allow you to use random MAC addresses, MAC hardware addresses, when you're connected to the network. So if you have this option on your Windows 10, it means that your hardware, the connection card, the network card that you're using, is able to do random hardware MAC addresses. And that's quite useful further Securicat function for those who are more security focused. So the random hardware addresses will give you randomized MAC addresses when you're connecting to your Wi-Fi network. Now bear in mind, if you're doing certain things with Wi-Fi networks which are fixing the type of MAC addresses that can connect to it, this can happen for some of you who are more security focused. You might have changed your router settings to actually make sure that the Wi-Fi addresses that are being connected, the MAC addresses that connect into your Wi-Fi network are fixed. If you decide to do this random addresses, then you're going to have problems connecting to your own network because you've securitized it there at the router level. So my point here is that you can do one or the other, either securitize your Wi-Fi network using fixed MAC addresses, or you can use random hardware addresses if you have the ability to do that on your laptop and PC. So this is definitely a Securicat move right here, one of the more Securicat moves you'll see, especially if you've got this third option, which is for the really Securicat people, where you can actually change your MAC address daily. This is a new option that Windows 10 introduced. For most people, you have the option to either turn it on, which will give you one fixed address, a random address, every time you're connecting to one new Wi-Fi network. That's the difference between these three options. If you turn it off, you won't have any random addresses. You'll just have one MAC address to every single network that you connect to. If you turn it on, that means that when you go to one Wi-Fi network, let's say it's your home Wi-Fi network, you'll have one MAC address. But then if you go to the cafe and connect to the cafe Wi-Fi, they'll give you a random address, a new one. Okay? If you change daily, this is the Securicat one that he's looking at. That's the one where every day, every time you turn on your computer, it'll be giving you a new random MAC address, including on your own network. So that's obviously the most security focused option that you can choose. When you're back to the network menu, you go down to the next part of the status, and here you've got, as you go down from status, you go down from the randomized hardware addresses, you go down here and you'll see change in network settings. Go ahead and click on sharing options here, and this is going to open up a special sharings menu here. This should be turned off everywhere, so this should be turned off for both private, guest, and all network profiles. They should be turned off. File sharing turned off network discovery. The only reason you might want to do this is if you're an enterprise, if you're working as a company or within a company, then you might want to have a lot of information files shared between computers. But as a personal worker, or if you're autonomous worker, someone doing your own business in your own computers, then you can actually turn off all of these elements. Same story here with private, turn off, no need for file sharing, print sharing. The next thing you might want to check out is also your firewall settings, and the way you get to that is if you go back to down here where you've got back to the status section of the network and internet, you'll see here Windows Firewall. If you click back to that on Windows Firewall, you'll be able to find firewall settings. For most people, this is going to be okay. The standard settings will be fine. At this stage, we're not going to give you any guidance in terms of how to fix your Windows Firewall and improve it. We'll be doing a further guide in the series later on in the Librastoria Productivity series. So for now, let's just leave it on automatic. Another thing you want to check out here is your network connections. The way you access that is by clicking through back to the status section here, and you'll be able to see Network and Sharing Center. When you go over to that, you'll see an option for network connections, and here you can actually see what network connections you've got on. So this is something that you want to check, to make sure that you haven't got any strange connections or connections you don't recognize. You should be able to see here the name of your personal network connection to the Wi-Fi, including the ISP, the provider of the internet that you're have a contract with. The VPN, so we're back at the network and internet section here, subsection menu, and here on the next section, obviously most of you will not be using dial-up because we're not back in the 1990s, so you're probably going to skip over, go down to VPN here. The VPN is up to you. A lot of people can set up a VPN here, so this is going to be very personalized to your interests. If you're using VPN, you probably are aware how to use this, so I'll leave that one to the next section. Flight mode, again, you can set that up, especially if you're on a plane, as the name suggests, so that's something for you to decide. Mobile hotspot, this can happen when some of your computers or laptops have a special type of internet card that allows it to be a hotspot for other devices. No real reason to do this. The only real reason would be to use your personal laptop or device or computer as a Wi-Fi repeater. That's to say, something that extends the range of your Wi-Fi to other devices in your household. Then you can turn on the hotspot and then put in a new. I suggest that you change the password and make it much longer and much tougher using multiple characters, numbers, and randomized letters. But that's just the only use you might have for this. And again here, turn on remotely. Of course, you should have that turned off. The only reason again for this is for enterprises with system administrators who might need to do some kind of repairs. But even then, I can't really see how Bluetooth would help to do that. So again, fewer moving parts is good for a more secure machine. Here we're going down to data usage. This is a really useful tool that most people don't think about too much. It's the next section here. And what it does is it shows you the different usage of your different apps and different processes, system processes. So it's kind of like what you'll find on a phone, a mobile phone. Now Windows 10 has introduced this for your own desktop or PC or laptop computing. So you can actually see the kind of internet usage has been used by the different elements. So here you can see systems use quite a lot of usage as it has applied these Windows updates. Remember, the first thing that I told you was to go on settings and update your computer, update your Windows 10. So that you can see it went through a range of updates, taking up quite a lot of space. And then you can see the next sections, and you can see Cortana, unfortunately, has already sent out 1 megabyte. So that you can see here again the problem of the moving parts. It's not just about privacy and security, it's also it's just using up your network. It's slowing down your internet connection, so it's less efficient, right? There's something else to bear in mind. So you want to go there and make sure that there's nothing, you cannot really turn off anything here. It's just for monitoring, checking that there's nothing weird that's happening in terms of which apps and which systems are using your connection. Okay, so this is all in data usage again here. The way you access that, the previous menu, this specific usage, you're in data usage and you click here on view usage. If you click on that, you'll see the different usage for your different connections. As you go down here, you've got an option to put a data limit. This is very useful, especially if you're using a, for example, limited internet plan, which may cost you if you go over the data allowance. So if you're scared of going over your data allowance, you can set a monthly limit using this option here. And in the background data, that's always useful as well. You can actually restrict background data, and that's actually a really good idea in terms of limiting the amount of apps they can access. So that will actually limit some of these apps, including possibly Cortana, some of the apps you don't want to be constantly, sending information to and from on your data network. Clicking and selecting to restrict background data will be very useful for that. Now at the bottom right at the end, there's a proxy option. Again, just like the VPN, I'm going to leave that for those of you who are using proxies or VPNs. You know what you're doing. Okay, so we're going back out to settings here, and we're going to the next subsection menu, and this time it's going to be the apps. This is going to be the longest setup element here. This is the more annoying aspect here, unfortunately, because this is where you have a lot of what's called bloatware. Bloatware means that when Windows 10 is shipped to you in a new computer, the Windows 10 and the computer manufacturers tend to stick loads of their programs and useless programs, games, all sorts of programs on your system because they're trying to make money from advertising. They're trying to make money from giving you this free software. So because of this, it's going to be a real issue with not only security, but also in terms of efficiency. It slows down your RAM, it slows down your computer. So you want to get rid of as much of that bloatware as possible, okay? So to start with, you've got apps and features. That's the first subsection of the apps menu here. And here you want to make sure that you select anywhere but warn me before installing an app. You don't want to install apps from anywhere. There's some security risk with that. But on the other hand, you don't want just apps from Microsoft Store because there are many better apps out there than what's available in the Microsoft Store. Which itself can have security vulnerabilities, just like the Android Google Play store. So you want that middle ground here, and that's why you'll be selecting. You'll be selecting anywhere but warn me before installing an app. Okay. Now you'll be able to see a whole range of a whole menu of your different apps here available on your computer. So you want to go through this list and check that, first of all the apps look right. They're the correct apps for you. There's nothing strange there. And then here you can see these two little extra options here. And in the optional features menu, sub-menu here, if you click on that, what you'll see is a whole range of different optional features. And some of them might be very useful for you, but a lot of them are just bloatware you don't really need. For instance, Windows Media Player. Do you really need this? I mean, there's an alternative media player that almost everyone uses that has a much more efficient capacity, which is the VLC media player. And you can download that and install that on your computer. So why would you want to use Windows Media Player? Or possibly you prefer Windows, so you can leave this. But if you don't, then you can click on that and disable it, get rid of that optional feature out of your system. And there's several others that you have to make your own personal judgments as to whether you want them in or out of your system. Okay. Then you can also go down to the next section here, app execution aliases. In that subsection here, you'll see various aliases that allow the apps that allow them to work in a certain way. And here, it's up to you whether you want to turn these on or off. I tend to turn them off again. Same the story as the moving parts. Okay. One interesting thing about optional features, which is a really weird one, which is that when you go back to optional features and you've deleted, let's say, one of the last optional features you'll see there, which is Windows Hello Face. Now, you can delete this as many times as you want, but it should keep coming up. So you have to wonder why that is. I don't have an answer. If anyone has an answer, please write so in the comments, because it is kind of weird that the Hello Face keeps turning back up. I think this is a face recognition screen lock device or service, which allows you to show your face on the camera of the laptop or the computer to allow you to log in using your face recognition. Unfortunately, you can't delete this. You can try it for yourself and try and delete it, but it'll come back onto your system. So obviously, Windows has made sure that that is undeletable. Okay, so as you go down to the apps, now here this is also very much your own personal choice. You can choose which ones you want or not. I'm going to show you one of the options to set up. I'm not going to show you what I delete and keep I'm not going to show you all of them, but I can show you how to do that. For example, 3D viewer, I have no interest in using this. This is not part of my business model. I have no real role or use for this. So what I'll do is, before just clicking, one option is simply to click uninstall. But in order to make sure that this app is completely gone from the system, what I'll do is I'll click on advanced options here. When you click on the advanced options, actually here I've done alarms and clocks. So if it's alarms and clock, same story here. Well, the alarms and clock one here, you cannot uninstall this. This is a system app, so it's stuck inside of your system. But even in those system apps, what you want to do is click on advanced options, and you'll see here various options here where you can click background apps and turn that off, because that turns off the background working of this alarms and clock app. So the point is, although you cannot uninstall it, you can actually reduce the background use of memory of this app, which means that's going to use up less of your RAM, less of your memory, and allow you to work more efficiently. Same story here with camera. Have a look at camera. You cannot uninstall this app. It's a system app, but you can still click on advanced options. And when you click on advanced options, you can get rid of the permissions to access a video, to access the background app. Of course, if you want to use your camera on your laptop, that's a useful thing, so you can keep the permissions on. But if you don't need it, then it's just, again, loose options that you don't really need. You can secure, tie them down, turn them off. And also, it's going to save up a lot of data and RAM usage. So this is actually a very useful thing to do. So this one, for example, Dolby, this is something that you have to choose for yourself. Do you want to keep Dolby Audio or not? These apps are often generally quite useless, especially if you're not using the computer for anything except work purposes, so you're not watching movies, etc. So you can actually go ahead and uninstall such an app. This is all up to you. You can research the name of the app if you're not sure whether to uninstall or not, and whether it's a critical or useful app. Feedback Hub. So do you really need to send your feedback to Windows? This is up to you. If you prefer to send feedback, you want to help Windows improve its products, then you can keep most of the permissions on. If you don't, then you can turn off the permissions. No reason for keeping permissions on. And you can go ahead and uninstall it as well. So again, first, before you uninstall, make sure you click on Advanced Options, turn off app permissions, and then uninstall it. That's something that you should generally do. Same story here with films and TV. If you click on it, you'll see the same advanced options here. Turn off the app permissions and then delete. Specifications, again, turn off the background app and delete. Mail and calendar, turn off if you're not going to use the Windows native mail app, if you're going to use other mail apps like Thunderbird, or if you're just going to use your emails using your browser, there's no reason for giving permissions to this. Mail and calendar, permissions off, unless you're going to use them, of course. If you personally want or prefer the Windows mail and calendar app, then of course you can leave it working as normal. And then you can go ahead and uninstall it. You also have the option to install from within the advanced options menu of the apps. You don't have to do it from the main apps menu. Microsoft Edge, again, if you like Edge as a browser, I don't know why, but for whatever reason, then you might want to keep it all. But if you're not going to use it at all, remember, this is a system app. You can't get rid of it. So at the very least, just turn off the app permissions. Get rid of the app permissions for that. OneDrive, if you're going to use OneDrive, of course, this is all, again, up to you. If you're using it for your business, if you're using it for your own personal reasons, you prefer OneDrive, that you can keep it on. But otherwise, if you're not going to use it, you can go ahead and install it. Mobile plans, again, same story. If you're using mobile internet for your laptop or computer, you've got limited element, or you need certain coordination with mobile plans, then you might want to keep this. But otherwise, you go ahead on advanced options, turn off the permissions, and then click uninstall. Voice recorder, this is a system app, so you can uninstall it. But remember, if you're not going to use this to record your voice or make recordings of your, I don't know, your bad guitar playing or anything like that, then you can just go ahead and turn this off and move on ahead. In terms of the Synaptics pointing driver, if you see anything like this, like pointing device, do not uninstall this. Often you can install it. Do not uninstall this. This is actually the mouse that I'm using right here. So this app allows your mouse to work. If you uninstall this by accident, you'll need to go and find a new driver that allows your mouse to work properly. So again, do not uninstall pointing device drivers. They're very fundamental for you to be able to use a mouse and basically to use your computer. So my point here is be careful of some of the apps that you have where you can uninstall. Some of them you definitely should not uninstall them. Web media extensions, you have the option to uninstall it if you're not going to use this. This is just a kind of extension for especially Microsoft Edge Web Media. If you're not going to use Edge, you're probably not going to need it. So advanced options, turn off the permissions, and then uninstall it. Xbox console, here this is a fixed app. You cannot get rid of it, but you can again get rid of the app permissions. So again, even in those cases where apps are system apps that you cannot that you can't uninstall, then you still have the option to reduce the permissions. Offline maps. So this is the next section here. So this was your apps and features. As you can see here, there's another section here of default apps. You probably won't need to touch this yet. When you install all the different programs, for example, if you're installing a new browser instead of Microsoft Edge, you want to install Mozilla Firefox, for example. If you're going to use that, then you want to go on default apps and set Mozilla Firefox as your default browser app. Okay, so that's going to be very useful for that. Most people know how to work this out. So here we're in the third section. You can see offline maps. There's no real reason why you should have maps, so you should just turn this all off. Again, moving parts, no reason for that. Apps for websites, again, turn this off. You're not going to use, most people are using Google Maps. If you're going to use Bing Maps, you can do it on a browser. Again, remember principle number 2 in the Live Astoria principles list, which is you should have you should always have some kind of browser priority first. If you can use maps on browser, use the maps on the browser. Do not use an app on your computer or your phone device. There's no reason for that. You can just find maps on browser, either Google or Bing Maps, whichever ones you prefer. Startup apps, this is very useful to reduce the impact on your startup to make your computer faster when it's first loading up. So when you've turned off the computer and you're loading back up, one of the reasons why it's very slow to boot up and go through the programs and load up the screen is because of the multiple startup apps. This is also very important to check for security. If you can see here that there's an app that you don't recognize the name of or that looks suspicious, you want to check that out, because that sometimes is how malware can use your startup to infiltrate your system. So you want to check the startup apps quite regularly. And here, as you can see, I've turned off the graphics. This is a professional computer, work computer, so I have no interest in using graphics here. And security notification icon, although this can be useful, you can turn it on, if you want, or off. But for the most part, because I'm using Malwarebytes and other third-party security options, they are much more efficient than Windows security. So you can have Windows security in the background, but you don't really necessarily need the notifications from it. On the other hand, as you can see here, you definitely want this one on. Again, the Synaptics touchpad, the pointer, the mouse pads app, you don't want to touch or mess with those, because you can end up starting up your computer without a mouse, and then you'll have to find a way to turn it back on using just your keyboard. So now we're in the next subsection of the settings menu, the general settings menu. And by now, I mean the previous section, especially the apps and features section, that will take you a long time to set up, to delete, to do all those things. So as you can see, we're zooming through here in this tutorial, but this will take you have to set aside quite some time to go through the settings. The good news is once you've done the settings once, it should be fine. You don't need to do this every time you install. You only need to do this once every time you install a laptop or reset your laptop or computer. In terms of the next subsection here, you've got the accounts element here. This is quite an important section here. You've got your info. You're going to find all the info that's relating to your account, your email account, especially if you're using a Windows linked account. For most people, I don't understand why there would be a need to link a laptop, which is something that is a physical computer, to your online Windows account. Again, the same principle. Principle number 2: if you've got Windows email, you can get a mail client like Thunderbird, Mozilla Thunderbird, or you can just go on your browser and log onto your Hotmail account or Bing account, whatever it is, Windows account. There's no reason for you to have direct link between your email account and your laptop, except of course if you're an enterprise using enterprise emails, etc., then that may be a reason. But other than just being lazy, there's no reason to link your account. So your account should always be a local account as far as possible. When you're first setting up the Windows 10, it'll give the option to select to link this or to sign in or to create a Windows account. You should try to avoid that as much as possible. Just go ahead and skip when they give you those options, skip and create a local account. When you're ready to sign in, you have to put in a password. Always secure your laptop or your phone with a password. So of course you want to go on sign-in options. If you haven't put a password at the beginning of the setup of your computer, of your Windows 10 computer, make sure you go ahead and in this settings section, in the account section, go ahead to sign-in option and set a password. Don't use a Windows Hello pin. Don't use the fingerprint or any of those elements. There's no real reason for this. This is just giving extra data, biometric data, to your computer, which is going to be related to Windows. And this is just not weak. This is too weak. This is not strong enough. 4 numbers is too weak to be a solid way to keep people out of your laptop, especially if you've lost your laptop or your computer, etc. So it's much better to use a full password, which has complicated alphanumeric and symbolic characters, and usually between 10 to 15 to 20 characters is a solid password. And you should always have a required sign-in, even when the PC wakes up from sleep. This is something that you should definitely have. Dynamic lock, there's no reason for this. This is, again, going to be very useful for system administrators running multiple computers for an enterprise. So you should have this ticked off as a personal or small enterprise user. Again, here, this is obviously just to be turned off. There's no reason for that to be linked to the personal email, the Windows email. We'll come back to this element here. This is quite useful extra security element that can be used. Obviously, if you're using this with other family members, you can always add them here. But even if you're using this as an individual or personal enterprise member or small enterprise member, then it's actually quite useful to add another user, and we'll do this later on in this guide. The sync settings, there's no real reason for using that, so again, you should turn that one off as well. In the next subsection menu here, after the main settings menu, you'll see a gaming subsection. Now this is very useful for what I'm doing right now, which is recording the screen to give, for example, guides, online guides for users. If you're not going to do this kind of thing, or if you're not going to play online games and record them, share it with your friends, then you could just go ahead and turn this off. There's, again, fewer moving parts secures the system. Again here, just turn this all off. Basically, no need for any recording, no need for any camera access. Same thing with game mode here, turn it off. Now the next subsection here is going to be ease of access. This is kind of a useful thing. It has not much to do with security, but it is quite useful for efficiency. The first things here, very easy to turn these off. This is going to reduce the amount of RAM and memory that's being used. So turning off transparency, although it makes the Windows screen look a little bit less cool because you can't see this transparency as before, but it does make the RAM use much less, much fewer RAM use. So this actually helps to reduce the impact on memory of all these extra functions. So I would actually turn all of these off because it helps your efficiency. Here, another little trick that helps you in efficiency is to increase the pointer size. That makes your pointer size much bigger and easier to find. I'm using, of course, here a large pointer size, but I don't think that you can see that because the recording of the screen does not show you that. But this is always useful just for your personal use to keep seeing where your pointer is, and you can also customize the color to change the color to make it red or green, whatever color you like. By the way, you can also do this with your cursor, which means when you're typing on Microsoft Word, or if you're typing on LibreOffice and you're writing up documents, you can easily find where the cursor is, so you can find where you were on the text. So that's an easy little trick to keep you, finding where you are on the text fast. Then, in terms of speech, this should absolutely not be turned on. There's no reason to have Cortana on. So anything that you can do in terms of speech should be turned off, and we'll get back to that when we look at the privacy submenu. Here, you don't really have much that you can do here, so just ignore these sections here. The next subsection after the ease of access is the search subsection, and here just generally, again, moving past, no reason to reduce this. Here, this is your choice in terms of search. This is going to affect the search bar on Windows, so you can have strict, moderate, or off, and you can turn off Windows Cloud Search and turn off device history. Again, no reason to be sharing this information with Windows, no reason to be putting it on the cloud. Just doesn't make sense, except if you have a specific reason for that. Same thing here, we'll talk to Cortana. So this is the next subsection of the settings menu. You'll go down to Cortana, and here this should definitely be turned off, except if you might have a particular reason for using Cortana. I cannot really think of what that reason might be, but for most people who won't have a reason for using Cortana, You can do all these searches yourself. It takes 5 seconds to type whatever you might ask from Cortana, so there's no real reason, so you should just turn off all of these options on Cortana. Now we go to the next subsection of the main settings menu, which is the privacy subsection. And here you're going to see the various privacy options. And here in general, again, you're going to need to lock down everything, all the moving parts, except those that you might have reason to use. So for instance, the general privacy settings, why should you have an advertising ID? This should already be off from the previous settings, the first menu that you had seen in this guide when you were setting up the Windows 10. But if it's not off, you should make sure that that's off. So make sure all of these are off. There's no reason for any of those suggestions or tracking aspects. Same thing here with speech. No reason for speech recognition. There are some perhaps particular reasons. You might have some problems with speech, physical impairments, and therefore this might be useful to get you to work efficiently. That's understandable, but for most users, this is not going to be really useful. Same story here with inking and typing should be off. Same thing with bit diagnostics, should be a basic diagnostics, not anything full. And here improving inking, again, that should be off as well. Feedback frequency should never be asked, so never. And for recommended troubleshooting, you should always write ask me before fixing problems. So after that, when you're going through to the next subsection here, after diagnostics, you want to check out activity history, and again here it should be ticked off. No storage, no sending, and in terms of clearing it, you should clear it. There's an option down here to clear. You should click on it and accept it and press OK and clear the activity. Here you got the app permissions. Again, this is going to be very depending on what you want to do with each of your apps. For example, if you have a map app, again, I don't understand why you should use a map app when you can just use your browser to access maps like Google Maps, Bing Maps. But if you are insisting on that, then here you can at least control how many apps can access that. So you can allow apps to access, but then specifically choose the map app that you're using and turn off location access for everything else, all the other apps. The ideal, of course, in terms of security is just to turn off all access to all locations. Same story here with camera. If you're using the camera app, you might want to keep camera access for the camera app, but then turn off the app access for all the other apps available. But in general, if you're not using your camera, if you have no need for that, then you can just turn off all app access. Same story here with microphone, same story here with contacts, radios, background apps. You can see here, if you, for example, are using calculator and need somehow to use the background app, you have it running in the background, then you can turn on calculator, but turn off all other apps. This is something that allows you to customize the access available. If you're not using that, just turn them all off here. Same story here with app diagnostics, same here with file system. One more thing, just below here, as you scroll down, you'll see at the bottom as well that there's an option to turn off non-app access to these things, such as a background, or this does not happen for all options, but you'll see this, for example, for location or microphone. When you're going through the microphone, make sure you scroll down all the way down past the apps, and you'll see an option that is also turned on, and that will actually allow microphone access for your browser, for instance. So if you're using a browser to use microphone access there, you should keep that on, that final option. But if you're not interested in using your microphone for your browser, then you can turn it off. And again, here you'll see the Windows update. This is going down to the next subsection of the settings menu, and here you've got the updates and security subsection. That's where you update. That should have been the first thing you do when you've installed Windows 10. But one of the things you can do when you come back to that, even if it's all nicely updated, you can come down here to advanced options for Windows Update, and you can change the amount of options that you have in terms of updating regularly, when it should update, what time it should update. That's where you can find those options to customize it as you wish. Delivery optimization should be off. The only reason anyone would use this is as a system operator, systems administrator, who's updating multiple PCs for a big company, large corporation, or enterprise. So for that reason, you would want to have multiple downloads. For most other users, you can have that turned off. Windows security, as I mentioned, this is where you access, of course, the Windows firewall and security menu. We'll do another session as Libistoria productivity guide on firewall settings later on. And here underneath, so most of these other options, as you can see, backup, troubleshoot, recovery. Recovery already covered this. This is where you do the system reset. That's where we started the whole guide here. Obviously, you can use that to do another reset if you want. Activation, to make sure you've got the correct activation for your Windows. Backup, of course, this is if you want to do a backup, system backup. You can also just do that by plugging in an external hard drive or using an online cloud hard drive such as Google Drive or the Microsoft one. So these are all options here that are just up to you. And the Find My Device, you can keep that on or off. Usually it's better to keep it off because, especially for laptops and computers, there's no real reason to use this in the same way you might want to use this for an phone, an Android or iPhone, because those are much more mobile laptops and computers. You'll have much more secure control over that because you'll be, putting it in your backpack or keeping it at home. So this is up to you again. This is personal choices you might have. Here, the last option to click on here for developers, this brings you to the developer features. This is actually something that most people forget to switch off, but unless you're a Microsoft developer who's developing apps, working as a coder, programmer, this is of course a very useful thing and improves the Microsoft services. But if you're just an average user, if you're a business, small business, no real reason to have this, so just make sure you click on Microsoft Store apps only. Make sure that there's no permissions for other developer mode apps. Turn off the device portal, should be already turned off, and untick all of these options here. For example, changing settings to show file extensions, change settings to show hidden and system files. There's no reason for this to all be allowed, and also the remote desktop should be unticked. All of these should be unticked. The only people who might want to use this are developers. Now you can go ahead and click on show settings here, and this is going to actually show settings for all of these elements here. So if you go ahead and click show settings, what will happen is you'll see this file explorer options. And here, this is up to you how to change this. Don't make too many adventurous changes because this can cause a lot of trouble for you in the long term. One of the things you can do is you can click show hidden files and folders. Why is that important? Because when you're going through and scrolling through your files and checking your files out, showing hidden files allows you to see if there's any weird files or anything that shouldn't be there. So it's an important thing to do in terms of security. And the other thing you might want to do is when you're going over to the next tab on the view tab here and you scroll down the section here, what you'll see here is you see use sharing wizard. There's no reason to use that, so you can turn that one off. Some of these other ones you can leave without touching those. At the bottom here you'll see the remote desktop, the one that was down here. Okay, you should have unticked this option, and there's more that you can do there. Because what you can do here is then you can press show settings for this one as well, and it'll come up again with this little systems property tab. Okay, and here we'll do a little bit more than just remote desktop. Again, remote desktop, you only need this for system admins. People are going to be using remote setting up of multiple computers on a big company or big corporation. So for most users, small business, personal users, you're not going to need these. So you're going to press don't allow remote connections and also untick this. This should already be unticked from here, so make sure that's unticked. But it's not good enough to just press OK. You can press apply, but then you're going to need to do a few other things here. You're going to go over here to the next tab, not the system protection one, but here the advanced one. And here this is going to be about improving the efficiency of your system. Now this is not for everyone. Some people like the nice visual effects, but if you're really focused on making a more efficient machine, or you have perhaps low level of RAM, or you have an old laptop or old computer, this is a place where you can actually improve the computer's efficiency. Select here on performance, click on the settings here. The settings option will open up here and you'll see the visual effects aspect. And here you can go and press either adjust for best. The easiest way to do it is if you're looking for the most efficiency, just press adjust for best performance. The problem with this is that it selects all things to be turned off. And one of the problems here is that there's two issues. Number one, thumbnails will not show up, which means, for example, if you're scrolling through videos or photos or files and you need to see at a click, at a glimpse of an eye, see what kind of file it is, you might want to keep that on. So you might want to be able to see that file whilst you're scrolling through the folder. So by clicking this on, you'll be able to see the thumbnail pictures of these videos, pictures, or document files. So that helps you more quickly navigate. So I would suggest that you keep this one clicked on, right? Obviously, you can also turn it off, make it more efficient, but I would suggest keeping it on. The other one I would suggest keeping on is smooth edges for screen fonts. This is because if you don't smooth the edges, the actual writing on the screen fonts, such as these screen fonts, will become all jagged and very sharpened and difficult to read. So that actually is very bad for your eyes. So you should keep the smooth edges. Other than this, most of these you can turn them off. It's up to you. Some of these are just extras, visual effects that don't really add anything to your experience. Then you can go ahead and go to the Advanced tab here next to that. So you're still in the Performance section here, which is where you were here, the Settings bar here. And here in terms of advanced processors, scheduling, and virtual memory, basically you should keep everything as it is. This is the basic setting, and it should be left as it is. On the other hand, some people like to do something called overclocking, which means that you change the amount of virtual memory that your computer is using through its RAM. You have the option to do this, but there are some horror stories. This can actually create some problems for your machine, so I would actually strongly recommend not to change this. If you do decide to change this, make sure you do the research overclocking, understand what it does to your CPU and RAM usage. It can be very beneficial, but it can also screw up your entire computer and make it much slower, so make sure you're very careful about this. We're back to the developers tab here, back to the for developers, scrolling down here at the final option here where it says PowerShell. Make sure that you unclick this and don't allow the PowerShell. And that's your settings all done. That's perfect. So you've got all the settings aspect done. What about a few more things, a few more tips here before you're really ready to use Windows 10 as securely as possible? Number one, the taskbar. This is purely cosmetic, but this is my suggestion that sometimes this can become very cluttered. And what people don't realize is you can easily take these programs that you can see here and drag and drop them onto the taskbar to make a shortcut. And that allows you to quickly and efficiently access these programs. But if you've got this huge search bar here and this Cortana button, which you've turned off anyway if you're not using Cortana, this is just clutter. So to get rid of that clutter, you go on the taskbar, anywhere on the taskbar except the apps. So you can click here or click in the blank area of the taskbar here, and then click on it and right click your mouse on this, and it'll open up this taskbar menu. And here you want to keep the taskbar locked because you don't want things to be moving around all the time, but you also want to get rid of the task view button, which is this little button that allows you to do multiple tasks in the one screen. So this of course might be useful for some of you, but those of you who don't use this or don't know what the hell it is, you can just unclick this and get rid of that. Again, Cortana, if you're not using this, unclick that, get rid of that. And you can also go on to search here, which I haven't put, but over here in the search menu, you can click on search and you can decide to reduce the search bar and just have the magnifying glass. That's an option. That reduces the size of the search bar and gives you more space here for programs to put programs in the taskbar. Another option here is you can also press the show keyboard button. This is always useful if your keyboard has a problem or if you've got a problem with your keyboard on the laptop. There's some issues there. This gives you a backup keyboard, which is a kind of a virtual keyboard that opens up. This is also useful for internet banking, for instance, if you're scared of your keyboard being the keystrokes being followed by some bad program on your system. At the very least, it gives you a secondary kind of a level of firewall there by using the virtual keyboard instead of physical keyboard. One thing also, as you're trying to put up these programs on the taskbar to make them easy to access, how do you do that? Well, down here on the bottom left, you'll see the Windows Start menu here. You click on that. You'll see this general Windows Start menu screen here. And what you want to do here, you choose the program. In this case, I've used the calculator because I like to use the calculator efficiently and often. So you take all the most used apps that you have. You take those, right click on it. Select more here. If you press pin to start, if you select the first option here, it's going to just get pinned here, which is kind of useless because you want to have a fast access to it. So instead you go down here, you can select more, and here you can choose pin to taskbar, and then you'll see it appear here as a calculator option. There you go, there it is. If you want to get rid of it, you just right click and you unpin. So here I'm not using Microsoft Edge, it's not a browser for me, so I'm going to right click on Microsoft Edge and unpin from taskbar, and it's going to disappear from the taskbar. One more thing here, as you can see, I've pinned to the taskbar the folder menu. the way I did this was I went down to, I opened up the folder. Actually, this should already automatically be available. And when you click on the folder menu, it'll open up this PC, okay? On the left-hand side here, on the bar on the left-hand side, you'll see this PC. Right-click on that and find the properties. This is going to allow you to do a little bit more tweaking of your PC and improve its efficiency. In the PC properties section here, which you'll see popping up here, and it'll tell you the version of Windows 10 that you have. Here it's a Pro version, and it'll give you all the other information about your system that you can see I've pushed away here because I'm not sharing that. On the left hand side here, you've got Device Manager. So you want to click on Device Manager. This is going to be a useful little tool. The Device Manager is going to show you all the different devices and the device drivers for your different devices and cards inside of your system. So for instance, you've got your processor here, you've got 4 processors on this machine that are going to be running your central processing unit. This is the processing power that powers all the calculations and computing in your computer. Then you've got your monitor, your network adapter, etc. Well, some of these you're not going to use. For example, remember we turned off Bluetooth when we were in the settings menu. We turned off Bluetooth, so I'm not using Bluetooth. Why should I use it? Well, of course I can select Bluetooth here, right-click on it, and of course update these drivers. This is something you should do regularly, or if there's any problem, for example, of your mouse or your disk or your card, your network card, one of the first things you should try to do is update your drivers. Sometimes outdated drivers are the cause of faulty cards, faulty elements in your computer. But if you're not going to use it, you don't have to just update. You can also just disable or uninstall the device. Now be careful that if you uninstall it, you'll not be able to use it again until you reinstall the same drivers. You'll need to find the exact card. It's a bit of a pain, right? Because you have to find exactly what kind of Bluetooth device you have installed in this computer and then install it from the internet. On the other hand, if you just disable it, you also have the option to re-enable it again at a later stage. So this is actually a further security feature that's going to cut off, that makes sure that you never have anything that either you turn on your Bluetooth by accident or some kind of malware that's designed to come in and turn on your Bluetooth without you knowing. By disabling it, it's a kind of extra shield, extra layer of protection that you're implementing there. One thing that you'll notice here is I don't have my microphone here. Let's say I don't want to use my microphone. Obviously, I'm using this microphone right now to communicate to you. But let's say I don't want to have my microphone communicating. Well, one thing I can do here is I can click up here to view. And one of the things I want to do, so this is the update element here. So this is what you'll see when you're updating any driver. For example, if you're updating the Bluetooth, you'll be updating it, and you can usually just search automatically to find the update. And here again, this is the disable option. So that's if you're disabling it, and you'll see a little sign here that says disabled. You see that little tiny sign that tells you that that Bluetooth driver now has been disabled. Here, the same story here, the imaging device, I don't need it, so I'm just going to disable it. That's my camera device. I'm just disabling that. I'm not using that. Now, one more thing here, what I was just mentioning, is that you might want to look for other devices that don't immediately appear. For example, my microphone device isn't appearing. So I'm going to go up here to view, and I'm going to click show hidden devices, and that's going to show you my mic device. You can see here it's kind of in a kind of grayish symbol that says it's a hidden device. So I'm going to get rid of that. If I'm definitely not going to use the mic here, if I'm just going to be working here productively on Word documents, all sorts of data documents, I'm not going to use any creative aspects such as cameras, microphones, whatever it is, then I want to uninstall this, so I can uninstall or disable this device, and that gets rid of that device. Remember, if you uninstall it, you're going to have to go find what kind of device it is, find it online, and then reinstall it. So that's a real pain. Make sure you only uninstall if you're sure of doing this. Another little trick here to finish off your setting up of Windows 10. You go back to the main desktop here, back to the main main desktop window, and here on the bottom left, next to the Start menu, you've got the search, the little search bar here, the little menu for searching. Click on that and search for Control Panel. Okay. When you search for Control Panel, go ahead and click on the Control Panel. This is going to give you the old school Control Panel that used to exist with the old versions of Windows, Windows 7, Windows 8, before they introduced this kind of general options menu that we've been using to set up the Windows 10. Here in the Control Panel, what you've got here is the different options here, and you want to go through one by one. And what you're going to do is click first on System and Security. And what you'll notice is just like the options bar there that we were using before, you've got all these different options also on the left-hand side. Now, in terms of the control panel, there's a few things here that you can only do from the control panel, which are very useful and important security elements. First of all, security maintenance over here where it says change user account control settings. You should definitely click on this. It'll ask you for a password. If you've put a password, remember we put a password with the settings. What you want to do is click on that and make sure that you've got the password put in, and then it'll take you through to the settings. In general, you should always push this to the maximum. They always notify. This means that every time a computer program or anything is being made on a system scale, then you'll get a notification of that and you'll have to put in your password. Very important element here. This is something that allows you to select what you install and do not install, and it's kind of a reminder as well, so that you make sure that you know what you're installing. So never turn it off. Always put it to the highest possible option. Press OK. You'll have to put your password again. Another option that you'll see in the settings menu, if you go down here, you'll see this option which says BitLocker Drive Encryption. This is only available for people using Windows 10 Pro. If you're using Windows 10 Home, then you won't have this option. But if you have the Pro version, you can click on Drive Encryption and you can go ahead and turn on BitLocker. And you can do it for the whole system, which is the entire computer hard drive, and the system, its files itself will become encrypted by BitLocker. This is very useful. Full drive encryption. This, bear in mind that when you do this, it's going to do this perhaps last, because this is going to take hours to do, especially if you have a very large hard drive. Then it can take hours and hours to encrypt everything. A final little tool that you can use, this is for the much more professional administrative elements, but you can also use this just to check up on what's been happening in your computer. This is the little log that basically logs every major event that's happening on your Windows machine. So if you click on View Event Log, and as you can see here, you've got the user account, what we already installed down here, the user account control settings. Remember, you changed that. So this is now going to turn up here on the View Event Log. So when you click that, you see this little shield. It means you're going to have to insert your password to get into that section. When you get through to that section, you'll see a total log of everything that's been happening. So you'll be able to see this different auditing log that tells you the time with a timestamp, the source of the program that's been asking for something to happen, the ID of the event, okay, and a specific question. So here you can see the user account management. When we change the user account, you can see it's been logged, and you can see whether it was successful. It gives you kind of idea of what has been done to change things inside your machine. So it's a very kind of professional tool here, but it could be useful for you as well to keep track of what's happening. Underneath the administrative tool log, underneath the log event log element, you'll see a little bit here which says Flash Player. That's 2-bit. This is kind of outdated. It's not going to be useful, and it's not going to affect any of you who are using modern browsers such as Google Chrome and Opera. The reason why you do have to change some settings here is because Windows 10 no longer allows you to uninstall Internet Explorer, and Internet Explorer is full of holes, security holes, and exploits. There is Windows Edge, of course, which is one type of Explorer, and we've already shown that we're not using that, and I'll show you how to further secure Windows Edge in a second. But Windows Explorer is actually embedded into Windows 10, and you have no choice to withdraw Windows Explorer. It used to be that you could actually get rid of it, but now you cannot really get rid of it. So one of the key things you want to get rid of is the Flash problems, because Flash has a lot of security issues, and via Windows Explorer, the old browser of Windows, there will be some holes, security holes provided from Flash. So you click on Flash there. As you can see down here, there's a warning that says these settings do not apply to Google Chrome or Chromium-based browsers such as Opera, Mozilla, etc. So that actually means that this is only affecting Internet Explorer, but it doesn't matter. It's very useful to still use kind of security settings here. So of course here on the privacy settings, you're going to press block all sites. You're going to delete all local storage. You're going to go ahead to the next section with camera and press block all sites again. Go to the next section again here with playback, block all sites again. And the advanced section, you're going to delete all, and also you're going to have delete these two sections here. You want to click on both of these and delete the data there. And that's your Flash settings fixed. Then on the control panel, your back control panel, you go to the next subsection here, network and internet. You want to click on internet options once you're in that subsection. And here again, this is only affecting Windows Explorer. It's not going to affect any of the modern browsers like Edge or Chrome. but it's still useful to lock up these security holes. So what you want to do here is you want to set up high security levels, enable protected mode, right? You want to go to the local internet. So you're doing this for each of these sections. So internet, high level, enable protected mode. Local internet, again, enable protected mode. Trusted sites, high level, enable protected mode. And then here, the next tab on privacy, you want to make sure that you're blocking cookies. Both cookies are blocked here. On content, you want to make sure that you've got autocomplete settings. So where it says autocomplete, press settings and make sure it's all ticked off, and delete the history and then exit that, because you don't want this data tracking going through Windows Explorer or vulnerabilities through Windows Explorer. And here on the advanced aspect, you want to unclick all of these options, make sure they're all turned off. Not all of them should be turned off. Some of them should be kept on. Okay, of these that you should turn off, all of these early options should be turned off. But as you go down, as you scroll down, you should keep block unsecured images of other mixed content. You should keep check for signatures, do not save encrypted pages, empty temporary files, enable 64-bit, enable DOM storage, enable enhanced protected mode, enable native XML HTTP support. These all should be ticked on because these are all security features that help you secure Internet Explorer. Everything else should be turned off. If you're not sure, research each of these options, you'll find information. Now we're going back to the main control panel menu and go into the next section here on programs. Click on programs here and you're going to click on turn Windows features on and off. So this is where you could actually, previously in the older days, you could actually turn off Windows Explorer. You would actually see here Microsoft Windows Explorer and you could turn it off as a feature and get rid of it. Unfortunately, you can't do that anymore, which is why we had to get through this internet properties and flash settings to at least improve the security hole. Now, generally for Windows features, unless you have a specific reason, for example, Hyper-V threading or virtual machine platform, if you have a specific reason, if you know what you're doing and you need these specific things, you should have them on. But if you're not using them, if you have no idea what they're for, they should turn them off. So usually I leave everything off except Microsoft Print to PDF and one more setting, which is called Sandbox, which I'll come back to at the end of this video. But for those of you who are not using Sandbox or any of the other specific settings, you will maybe just want to keep print to PDF. This setting is just useful because if you're doing a lot of work with Microsoft Word and you want to change a Word document easily and convert it to a PDF file, then you can use Microsoft Print to PDF to save a Word file or a LibreOffice file into a PDF file. So that's actually a very useful. Actually, with LibreOffice, you can do this without this setting. So if you're using LibreOffice, you can also turn this setting off. But if you're using Microsoft Word and you want to save a Word file as a PDF or a Microsoft PowerPoint file as a PDF file, then you want to keep this Microsoft Print to PDF function on. Everything else, you can turn it off unless you're going to use it, right? Once you're ready, you could go ahead and confirm that, and it will take some time. It will say, it will take some minutes, maybe 10, 15 minutes even, if it's a lot of things that it's doing, and then eventually it will tell you Windows has completely requested changes, it needs to reboot. At this point, you should probably say restart later, because you still have to finish off your settings. Eventually, when all your setting up of your system is done, then you can restart, and remember you'll have to do all those updates, because remember from the beginning of this guide, you saw that we launched the Windows updates early on. So you'll be basically restarting and it'll be doing a lot of Windows updates that have been downloading in the background whilst you're doing all these setups. Okay, one more thing here. I mentioned the Windows Edge, Microsoft Edge. If you're not going to use Microsoft Edge, right, you should at least shut down some of its vulnerabilities or exploits or weaknesses, right? Because of course you cannot delete Windows Edge. This is one of these apps that Windows has forced you to use. So one of the options that you can get, kind of at least secure it a little bit, is you can click on Edge, open it up, and then on the top right here, there's three dots, the typical three dots of settings. Click on that, and you'll see the settings bar. As you can see here, I've set Edge on a dark theme, so that's up to you. You'll be able to change the theme of Edge as you wish, but this will be the same menu whether you're in the dark theme or the light scheme. And here you should definitely choose to show the favorite bar, show the home button, especially if you're going to use this. This is always useful to keep your bookmarks. But in terms of privacy security settings here, you should definitely turn off show search and site suggestions. You should turn off search history, turn off page prediction, block pop-ups, and make sure that Windows Defender Smart Screen is on. Sorry. And you should do this, generally, even if you're going to use Edge as a browser, but especially if you're not using it, you should at least secure that. If you are going to use Edge as a browser, you might want to keep Adobe Flash, because you won't be able to watch YouTube videos or watch Amazon Play, whatever videos or films you want to watch. So you might want to keep Adobe Flash for that reason. But if you're not going to use it, or if you're just using it for work, for research, for anything that you're doing as work, then you're going to keep Flash Player off. This is not necessary. Same thing here with Media Autoplay. You should keep it blocked. On the advanced options, again, open sites with apps, this should be off. There's no reason to use this. Again, the maps, remember the principle number 2. If you're going to use maps, just go on Bing, search on the Bing address, search on Google Maps address, and go find your maps there. You don't need to use any app. The only reason you might want to use the app is if you want personalized apps, if you have a business reason where you need to use apps to remember locations, then of course that's a very useful tool. But for most of you out there, you're not going to really need to use this kind of embedded apps. Instead, you can just use the browser. And Cortana, of course, you should definitely turn off. There's no reason for using that. Okay, what about uninstalling and installing programs? What I showed you earlier was this section here with the options menu and the apps there. These were apps, and Windows 10 introduced this distinction between apps and programs. And that's an important distinction to include, because when you're using apps, they're much less secure, much less backed up, much less updated than programs. Programs are usually, up to now still, especially for desktop computing, much more updated, much more backed up, much more researched, much more worked on by the various program providers, by the program developers. So generally you should want to install program versions instead of either Microsoft or other third-party app versions. Definitely third-party app versions should be avoided as much as possible, because there's a lot of security holes in them. So you should definitely turn off the apps as we did previously in the settings menu. But as you can see here, I've installed several programs, and this is the difference. These are not apps that are going through the Windows 10 store or through third-party stores. This is directly downloaded from these program makers' websites, and this is generally a much more secure option. So you can see here I've got Mozilla Thunderbird as a client, email client. You've got Opera browser, which I believe is much more efficient and secure browser than Microsoft Edge. So I will actually do a guide on Opera later on. Malwarebytes is the security app here, which is also an important app to have, especially anti-malware, and the VLC media player that I mentioned earlier as a replacement for Windows media player. So you can see these were downloaded directly onto the desktop as programs. But let's say some of these you're unhappy with, or for instance, you want to get rid of a program such as Microsoft OneDrive, which usually comes in as a program already installed. Then you go to Control Panel, and this time on the left-hand side or in the main Control Panel settings, you select Programs and you press Uninstall Program. Here you'll see the list of different programs that you have here. And as I mentioned many times already, Synaptics pointing device should not be installed. This is a fundamental device driver that allows you to use your mouse, so don't touch that. Whatever the name of the company that's providing, in this case it's Synaptics, but whatever the name of it, if it's a pointing device driver, don't install it. But let's say you've had enough of VLC, you click on that and you go ahead, click on that uninstall. You'll have the option, you can right click on the program and decide to uninstall it, and then you can go through the process of uninstalling it. I've done this, as you can see, with Microsoft OneDrive. I'm not using that program, so I've uninstalled this. Again, going back to the principle number 2, leanness is very important. You have to keep a lean machine, so always uninstall anything that you're not going to use. For example, here I've got 2 antivirus, anti-malware programs. I've got 1 email client, 1 internet browser, and 1 media player, and that's all I'm using on this machine. Lean is clean, right? Windows Update, you go back to Windows Update, check back, see what's happening there, see if it's finished downloading, and then one very important thing, even if it's finished downloading, it doesn't always do everything, so remember to, again, check multiple times for Windows Update. Even if it says it's finished downloading and it's ready for a restart, check once more, run the check once more, and even when you've done the restart, you restarted the machine, you updated, go back to the settings, go back to Windows Update, Update and Security Windows Update, and do a check again. Just keep running the updates until you're 100% sure that there's no more updates to be done. And also make sure that you do the optional updates as well. Don't make a difference between fundamental updates, security updates, and the optional updates. They're all very fundamental to actually keep your Windows machine secure. And here we are back to the main settings menu, Windows settings, and this is the final step This one is really another SecureIt measure for those who are really security focused. So by now you've pretty much set up your machine. There's two more measures here, SecureIt measures, which will help you be security focused. Okay, so this is the last steps now. So you should really be ready and set up by now. But we've got a couple more SecureIt measures for the more security-minded cats out there. So what do you do for the final kind of two further SecureIt measures that are available? Go back to Windows settings here and go ahead to back to where you were in accounts. So as I'd mentioned, accounts, and we had skipped this, and I'd mentioned earlier that there's something you could do here. So in this case here, when you come down here to family and other users, in this section here, you'll see that, of course, if you've got other family members using your laptop, or as you can see here, if you're an enterprise and you're using kiosks, for example, in an airport, you might have kiosks that allow people to, buy or sell, buy tickets or check in or whatever. This is where you can have kind of a kiosk for the public. So that's of course useful for enterprises. Or here, if you're using a shared PC between multiple family members, that's where you're going to have to add someone's name and let them access the PC. But this is also a SecureIt measure from the point of view of an individual firm with its main, for example, its primary computer, its main administrative computer, where you really have information you don't want to lose, otherwise you'll be in trouble for the whole company. Or for instance, for an individual, this is, of course, something where you can actually add a further account, and this second account is not going to be an administrator account. So what we've done so far, as you've noticed, if you remember with the various elements of the user account control, putting in your passwords, all of this was done, and the password itself was created for an administrator account. You are the administrator when you set up this computer the first time. However, you might want to also create a non-admin account for yourself, or as a company to create a kind of secondary account that most people can work on, whereas the admin account, each computer, this can also be done for each computer in your computer network as a company, that keeps the admin aspect out. Most people do this, most system admins do this when they're running companies' PCs. So this can also apply for individuals as well. So what you want to do is go and click on add someone else to this PC. And here you're going to do the same thing that you did when you first set up or reset up, if you did a reset, the Microsoft account, which is it gave you this option about signing in, creating a Microsoft account. As I advised you, you should not be linking your Microsoft email to your computer or laptop. There's no reason for this. You can easily access your Outlook emails either in a browser or via a mail client, like the Windows mail client that we deleted earlier, or via Thunderbird, which is the one that's being used on this machine. You have many options. Why should you have a personalized computer? If you really want to, of course, there's nothing wrong with that. You can definitely do that. That's an option as well. But for security cats out there, then you probably won't want to use a personalized email. So all you have to do is this very tricky little option, and you'll see this in the first time you set up also Windows. You'll see the same thing here, which is says I don't have this person's sign in information, or you can see I don't have any sign in information. Click on that, and it'll actually give you the option to it'll give you the option to create an account, and here of course you can create a random account if you like, but the easiest option here with Microsoft thankfully still provides this option, unlike Google, which is they can add a user without a Microsoft account. So you can go ahead and click on that option and create a local account. Okay, so this is going to create a local account. You should use another username separate from the administrator's username. And now you can also add another password, and to make it very secure, you should use a different password. So you should use an administrator username, administrator password, and a secondary account username and secondary account password. And the secondary account will not be an administrator, it will be a local user account. Once you've done this, you actually will see this screen. Once that's done, there's a small process, it'll take a few minutes to set up. You'll see the screen and you'll see the name, local account, and that will be, you'll see the name of your new account here. So that means that as the administrator now, you can see this new account. So here's the difficult part. Just when you thought it was all over, all the slog that we've gone through, this is the problem here, which is when you get out of the settings menu here and you go back to your desktop, you go down to the Windows Start menu here, and you can see here the options, the various, you'll see the various apps and programs. And over here on the left side on the Start menu, you'll see the options to sign in and sign out. And here you'll actually see the name of your new account, the local user account. And you can actually click on there and then put in the password. It'll log you out of this admin account, or you can alternatively also sign out or lock this admin account, get out of that, and you'll be able to log into your new one. But of course, the problem is everything that we've just done for the administrator, you'll have to redo again for the local account. Some of the things that you redo for the local account will already be locked. Remember that the local account is not admin. So many of the permissions that you've granted as an admin, remember the permissions about microphone use or camera use, those are all going to be locked. The local account user will not be able to touch those. So that's actually the reason why you're creating a local account as a Securicat, is that you're basically trying to avoid anyone, even if you're using this account for your work, for your emails, for whatever is happening, anyone who's using this account won't be able to accidentally install malware, and even if malware is there, they'll have much more limited access to the admin. So this is why the admin should be set up. Everything we've done to set up the admin here, it should all be done in order to create a kind of basis for the machine, right? But then everything that you're doing in terms of work and using the actual laptop or PC, you should be doing it from this user account, the guest account. Okay, it's not a guest account, it's a user account. You can also set up a guest account for anyone you've got as a friend coming in as a guest. But this is a user account. It has less privileges. It has no administrative privileges, which means that you cannot change a lot of those settings. But a lot of the other settings you'll have to redo again. So if you want to start that whole setup again, what you'll need to do is log into your local account here, and then go back to the beginning of this video and then play it all over again and start doing everything we've set up for the admin account. You have to do that with the user account again. I hope that makes sense. It's hard work, but you have to secure it. The good news is you only do this once, and then you won't have to do it again until you reset your PC or decide to sell off your PC, whatever it might be. Okay, one more little trick, one more Securicat trick before you go ahead and set up the user account, the local user account, and maybe restart to install finish off and install the updates. One more thing you want to do, go back to control panel. So you're still in the admin account here, still an administrator. Go back to control panel, or rather you might want to do this only in the account that you'll be using, so the local account, for instance. So you go to the control panel here, which is the search bar, search for control panel, you'll find the control panel app. If you remember, there were multiple Windows features, and I'd mentioned that one of the other Windows features is Windows Sandbox. This is a feature that allows you to sandbox your PC, your desktop, from a further virtual platform, which is the Sandbox platform. This is very useful for especially security cats who want to use online banking, for instance, or various other more secure applications. And I'll do an entire, we'll be doing an entire section here in terms of the sandbox, using the sandbox virtual platform in order to separate your user account desktop, your admin desktop, which will be already logged off if you've done things correctly, and further separate a third layer, a third inception level here of computing in which you've got the virtual sandbox in order to do specific things such as online banking or where you're putting in passwords or sensitive information. Then you want to do that through the sandbox. Okay, so click there, install the sandbox if you want to be a security cat, and click that, install that, and then you're ready to restart. It'll give you the option this time again to Windows has completely requested changes. After a while, it can usually take quite a while to install. This will take maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, depending on the speed of your computer. Once it's all done, you can click restart now, and finally everything will be setting up. You'll have the Windows updates being set up, so that'll take a long time to restart, and all these different features that you've set up or uninstalled, they will also be setting up. Once all this is done, then you can go back to your user account, and by then you should have redone everything we did for the admin account. You should have redone that again for the user account, so it should be secure. You'll have all the various programs you need, and again, when you need to do the secure computing, you'll be using the Windows Sandbox, especially if you're doing online banking, anything that has to do with passwords or secure information. That's pretty much it. That's a full, or as full as it can be, basic guide to installing and running secure and efficient version of Windows 10. What's missing, of course, is the Windows Firewall, a few of these other more advanced features, and how the Windows Sandbox works itself. plus a guide to some of these programs, including the antivirus and anti-malware programs and the good browser program setup, how to set up the browsers properly. This will be done in future guides, but for now, that's it. So take care, security cats, and be well. Take care.